and transporting that bitumen that way. I'm just wondering, would it not be feasible, even though it's twice the distance, it's not in the mountains, why can't they run a pipeline through the prairies, which is pretty much perfectly flat, and run it to the head of Lake Superior there, and then put it in tankers and send it to in Montreal?
Right.
I don't understand. I'm pretty sure that any pipeline is a bad pipeline, but if we're gonna run one,
if we're gonna be pragmatic about the situation and understand that, no matter where we stand on the political spectrum and where we stand on oil as an issue in itself, that these companies are still going to be refining oil, and if they're gonna do it, at least do something that's safer. I mean, this is the exact opposite.
And again, why not? And if it's going to happen, if that oil is going to be extracted, if the environmental, like in terms of climate change, and if that carnage is going to be created, why not do something to advance the cause of energy security in our country? Why not employ Canadian people doing it, as in working the refineries, etc.? I'm not advocating for that. I'd just rather see the tar sands.
It's a better option than the current option that we're being given.
I'm just wondering, and I know that certain politicians in Canada have been kind of bantering about the idea of, hey, why not run this oil east?
I believe there's been some interest by some of the Atlantic provinces too, which have some refining capabilities.
Absolutely, like we have some of the largest fossil fuel reserves in the world, yet our Atlantic provinces are subject to importing very unethical oil, if you want to consider the ethics of oil the way ethical oil does and as relevant.
It brings up the geographical aspects of it too, because we know that Stephen Harper is very interested in selling oil, not only selling oil to the Chinese, but now moving to the next level of selling off actual allowing Canadian businesses to be purchased by China. And the proper way to send oil to China is obviously to go to the BC coast and have Chinese oil tankers pick it up there. So, I mean, it just does get right back into the whole politics of this whole issue. Why doesn't Stephen Harper want to see more refinery jobs in Canada? Why is he pretending that by creating jobs that are mostly going to be eaten up by Chinese labor and possibly American veterans in two provinces that are nearly at they have so small unemployment that the jobs being created here, the fact that they're being promoted in the sense of being, that we need to sacrifice some of our environmental concerns and create jobs in two provinces that have such a low rate of unemployment. It's curious. And I mean, it goes to show that it's always disingenuous when it comes to the Conservatives as to why they say certain things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. See, now, I mean, I'd like to just throw it, because I'll be the guy that is willing to throw something out that's totally speculative and far afield. There's a reason that most petroleum products are refined in world powers, in the military powers, because when push comes to shove, the person who controls the oil resource controls a lot, but the person who controls the refineries, also controls the countries that have the oil but don't have refineries. It's not just an economic or energy security kind of issue. It's a national security issue too. We have fossil fuels, but what is our capacity to refine them? We have the infrastructure to even support our own refineries with our own resources, because without building and I'm just gonna advance this scenario, not that I want to build a huge pipeline eastward to the Montreal refineries. I just think the world has to get off the fossil fuels, because climate change is a clear and present danger to our species, right?
And while you may be pragmatic enough to see that might be a better choice, what makes you a radical, Tony, is the fact that you're interested in other forms of energy. Not until we suck every bit of oil out of the earth.
Yeah.
And then those other companies that are interested in oil can switch and be more interested in wind energy, and wind energy will be okay. Like I mean, unfortunately, that's probably what's gonna have to happen. I don't support that either. I'm not suggesting that that's good.
Well, if I could make just a simple recommendation to every person who also has the right to out there that has the right to cancel my friggin' vote, if I could just ask those people to don't vote out of fear. You know what I mean? Don't let them make you afraid of alternative energy or consuming less energy or what have you. I think that our species needs to make a go of it and radically reduce our fossil fuel consumption at the same time. Do you know what I mean? People who think that
we should be looking at transitioning. I mean, a complete and utter stop on one day is not going to happen, but we should be looking at a transition.
Absolutely. Now, people who think that our economy is completely dependent upon oil have to understand that our economy is put over a barrel by oil. I'd like to play a quick little clip here by Nobel Prize winner economist Joseph Stiglitz. He's saying a little thing about oil and the economy and the wars that have affected the price of that commodity. Okay, here I'm just going to go with this. That's cool. Here we go.
As we're debating about where the cost of oil is that in 2003, when we went to war, the cost of oil was $23 a barrel. And futures market, which looked into the future, looked at supply and demand going forward, anticipated that it would remain around $23 a barrel. But of course, once we went to war, the major anticipated source of energy was the Middle East. We created a lot of havoc in the Middle East, and the price of oil started rising from $23 a barrel on up. Well, why was that important for our macroeconomy? Well, America was spending huge amounts of money, more than $100 billion extra on importing oil. Well, money that was being spent to import oil was money that was not available to generate strength jobs inside the American economy. And that would have meant that the American economy would have been weak. We would have had unemployment.
Now, Mike, one thing I'd like to know, does anything that this gentleman, Joseph Stiglitz, say strike you as being completely unreasonable?
Well, the whole thing sounded similar to our situation here.
Yeah. See, now, here's the deal. What he didn't mention was the price of oil when the economy collapsed in 2008. He did mention that before we went to war in Iraq, that oil was trading at $23 per barrel. Okay?
Right.
When the economy did its major swan dive in 2008, oil was trading at $140 a barrel. Now, given the fact that that our economy is predicated on consumption of oil, everything has to do with it. Our manufacturing, our transportation, our agriculture, everything. Okay, our living conditions are predicated on the consumption of energy based on fossil fuel consumption. Okay.
Right.
But what we don't hear in our media very often is a connection between us fighting for oil in other people's countries and the price of oil, and the state of our economy. And I agree. When they explain it as, the American mortgage bubble, the housing bubble there collapsed, and that's why we. Okay, here's the thing. Stop right there. What did the $140 a barrel oil have to do with that economic collapse? Do you see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see the absolute inflationary pressures that is brought upon the economy by a sudden spike in the price of oil? Oil was trading for 6 times more than it was 5 years ago. That is a staple of our economy, and to inflate the cost of it by 6 times. No wonder food prices were going up. No wonder everything was going up. And here's the deal. So what happened was, all of a sudden there was this domino effect through the financial industry, and the money supply decreased by almost 40% within months of the 2008 collapse. So the effect of the collapsing money supply also created a deflationary economy, reduced the demand for oil, and started bringing the price of oil back into the $100 range.
Back up.
Because the world economy cannot grow when the price of oil is over $100.
Does this have any relation to the fact that the Americans have essentially, it's been since Nixon pegged the American dollar to the sale of oil through an agreement with the OPEC nations?
Yes, it absolutely does, and it has a relation to the late great Milton Friedman, our favorite economist here, the progenitor of trickle-down economics. Okay, because as I said, one of the pillars of trickle-down economics was to control the money supply to combat inflation. So using interest rates and the amount of currency that's in circulation, you can control inflation. You can deflate the value, you can inflate the value according to your needs. Now, after 2008, when there was the so-called credit crunch, what happened was all of a sudden pricing pressures were brought back under control, right?
Right.
Because there was just not enough money to go around to pay for these things. People were being laid off, industry was shutting down, consumption actually came back into line. But most importantly, the capital that speculators had available to them to drive up certain commodity prices, because capital was in shorter supply, okay, was drying up, and prices were coming back down. Okay, so you can see that there's a ripple effect in the economy. We go to war for Iraq's oil. Okay, there's no real sense in debating whether or not that was the real reason we went there. That's ridiculous. That's one of the main reasons we went there. Okay, and I say we as in we're directly or indirectly part of the coalition of the willing.
Right. Even though Jean Chrétien was smart enough to keep us out of the actual fighting, there's no doubt that the Canadian economy is completely tied to the American economy.
Right, yeah,
we should
not make the mistake of totally differentiating our government from that of the American government under any circumstances. You know why? Because sorry about that, man.
That's okay.
Because every government in North America is completely beholden to the oil powers. That's just a fact. It's a fact we have to contend with as a people if we ever want to escape from the clutches. Do you know who really benefited from that 2003 war in Iraq, and who benefited from the sudden and egregious appreciation of the price of oil? Or first of all, speculators. Second of all, the oil companies themselves. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Well, if anybody's bringing it home for us, Tony, that's bringing this to Canada, it's good old Stephen Harper and all of his crappy policies from the Canadian Reform Alliance Party.
Yeah, absolutely. Craptastic, oil lobby-friendly policies from Stephen Harper. Before I get totally out of control with regard to this
the whole topic of oil.
Yeah, why don't we come back and talk about something else? Anything else? I don't care. We could go back to the old Olympics if you want after this, but maybe we should take a.
Well, there's a couple other things I guess that we can mention in passing and then wrap up. But yeah. I'm really glad that Damien Gillis joined us tonight, and I'm pretty sure there's still some discussion to be had with him. And I'm thinking maybe in a future show we could just focus solely on deconstructing the information provided by ethicaloil.org and the way that their talking points are used on Sun Media. I think that might be something to focus